After the murderers of Pertinax had been punished, section 14. After the murderers of Pertinax had been punished, Severus approached Rome with all the rest of his army, fully armed. The Romans were absolutely terrified at his appearance because of the reputation for what he had achieved with such daring good fortune. The people and the Senate went out with garlands and laurels to greet him as the first man or emperor to have achieved such enormous successes so effortlessly and without bloodshed. Apart from his general qualities, they were particularly impressed by his shrewd judgment, his noble endurance of hardship, and the confidence and courage of his daring enterprises. After the people had welcomed him with acclaim and the Senate had greeted him at the gates of the city, he went up to the temple of Jupiter for to sacrifice. After making favorable sacrifices at the other temples, as was the custom for an emperor, he returned to the palace. On the following day, he went down to the Senate house, where he made a very moderate and promising speech in the assembly, greeting them all collectively and individually. He had come, he said, to give the murder of Pertinax and his rule would he had come to avenge the rule of Pertinax, avenge the murder of Pertinax, and his rule would also mark the beginning of an aristocracy. No one would be put to death or have his property confiscated without a trial. Informers would not be tolerated. For his subjects, he would provide a period of true prosperity in making the reign of Marcus a model for all his actions and adopting both the name and outlook of Pertinax. By this speech, he enticed most senators into adopting a favorable attitude because they believed in his promises. But there were some more senior men who knew Severus's character and privately circulated their opinion that he was really a crafty man and a master of arts and the art of contrivances, who was absolutely accomplished at acting out any kind of deception, but in the end obtained his own benefit and advantage. This was later, in fact, proved to be true. Severus made only a brief stay in Rome, during which time he made a generous distribution of money to the people, put on some shows, and gave out a large donative to the troops, the best of whom he's elected to serve as imperial guards in place of those who had been dismissed. Then he hurried off to the east, where Niger was still putting off his departure and remaining inactive amidst the pleasures of Antioch. Severus intended to launch an unexpected attack to catch him unprepared. The troops were ordered to get themselves fitted out for the expedition, while he also made a widespread recruiting drive to collect together an army. Young men from the Italian cities were enrolled in the levy, and any troops left in Illyricum were ordered to make their way down through Thrax to meet him. He also fitted out a naval force and dispatched all the triremes belonging to the Italian cities, manned with troops. A large, varied force was equipped with great speed, since Severus knew that no small armament was needed to oppose the entire continent opposite Europe, which favored Niger's cause. Section 15. While making these efficient arrangements for war, Severus, who was naturally cautious and wary, had been having his suspicions about the army in Britain, a large and powerful force of extremely good fighters. In charge of them was Albinus, the governor, a patrician-born member of the Senate, who had been brought up in the lap of wealth and luxury inherited from his senators. Severus was anxious to trick Albinus into giving his support, since there was a danger that he might perhaps have just since an incentive to aim for the participant, relying on his wealth and ancestry, the strength of his army, and this reputation of his in Rome. In that case, he might make a bid for power and capture Rome, which was no great distance away, while he, Severus, was occupied in the east. By pretending to pay him honor, Severus won over Albinus, who in any case was vain and rather simple, and on this occasion was taken in by the many promises which Severus made in the letter of his. He declared Albinus Kaiser, thereby anticipating Albinus's desired object was giving him a share of power. He sent off a letter containing a thoroughly friendly request to Albinus, asking him to devote his attention to the warfare of the empire, since he, Severus, needed the service of a man of noble birth, still in the prime of his life, when he himself was an old man, racked by gout and with children who were still very young. Convinced by this letter, Albinus readily accepted the honor, since he was happy to achieve his ambition without the danger of fighting for it. Severus also read out the letter in the Senate so as to reinforce their loyalty. He gave permission for coins of Albinus to be struck, and by the erection of statues and other honors, he gave recognition to the favor that had been conferred. After he had cleverly concluded his negotiations with Albinus, so as to remove the danger from Britain without risk to himself, and after the rest of the Illyrian army had joined him, he believed that everything was under his control and directed towards the advantage of his own rule. Then he hurried off against Niger. Many historians and poets who have made the life of Severus the theme of their entire work have given more detailed treatment to the stages of his march, his speeches at each city, the frequent manifestations that were interpreted as signs of divine providence, the topography of each place, the disposition of the forces, and the number of soldiers on either side that fell in battle. My aim is to write a systematic account of the events within a period of 70 years, covering the reign of several emperors of which I have personal knowledge. I shall narrate only the most important and conclusive of Severus's actions separately in chronological order. I shall not exaggerate to flatter Severus, as contemporary writers do, nor shall I omit anything which merits attention and record. That is the end of Book 2, and next time I will be starting with Book 3 of Herodian, which begins in the previous book. A description was given of the death of Pertinax, the overthrow of Julianus, Severus's arrival to Rome, and the departure of his expedition against Niger. And so we will continue next time with more of the story, starting in Book 3. Thank you, and until then.